Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, here to bring you another episode review from Season 6 of The Loud House. Today's episode is titled, Snow Escape. First we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into it. It's the last day before winter break, and the kids try to avoid Lynn pummeling them with snowballs as they make their way to school for their holiday class parties. After a few of them fall victim to their sister and their plan to trap her inside the family restaurant fail, Lynn ends up trapping herself under some snow from the rooftop, and the kids get their happy ending after all. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. Some could say this technically counts as the fourth Christmas episode of the series, but it's not really about the holiday itself when you break everything down. It just happens to take place during the month of December, given all the Christmas decorations seen throughout the episode. It's sort of like seeing the fall decorations in the price of admission, but it's not really a Halloween-themed episode. But regardless, let's get to the good, the bad, and downright ugly parts of this episode, so we might as well start with the good stuff first. I like the sequence where Lincoln and a few of his sisters ripped out the electronics from the singing Christmas decorations and tried using them as disguises so Lynn wouldn't find them. It was so silly, and yet, in a way, it was sort of adorable seeing them dressed up like that. It was even more hilarious when they started running and then stopped to pose for a brief second and kept doing that as their way of selling Lynn on the idea they were lifeless lawn ornaments, and them singing that song when Lynn pushed the button was pretty clever too. Well, I mean, it was clever until Lola blew their cover, because, honestly, that's as far as the positives go for this episode, although there is one, technically two more positives that I'll bring up a little later. Besides Lola's shining star, the goofy disguises, and everyone sitting around the fireplace happily enjoying Christmas snacks, I couldn't find too many good things in this episode. With that in mind, it's time to talk about the ugly things, and they mostly stem from Lynn, who is also responsible for why their house slants. Now that little flashback to the slanted floors in the episode Homespun makes a whole lot more sense. Anyway, it's explained that when newly fallen snow following a storm is mixed with milder temperatures, it creates the perfect condition for making snowballs and thus creating a packing day, something everyone in the Loud House fears. Apparently, Lynn goes full beast mode when this day happens and waits outside to hunt everyone down so she can pummel them with snowballs. She straight up turns into a wild savage complete with animal-like movements, grunts, and has to eat a lot of food to maintain her energy. The biggest question is this. Why? What is the reason for Lynn going crazy with throwing snowballs, especially this far into the series? Much like Luann and her going off the deep end with pranks on April Fool's Day, there's no backstory explaining why Lynn suddenly loses her sanity on this particular day. This episode is not only a direct contradiction to the episode Snowboard, where she could be seen happily throwing snowballs with her siblings and not acting like a complete lunatic about it, but this behavior is never shown or even hinted at in any previous snow-related episode. I'm all for developing characters and giving them more layers to who they are, but to suddenly add this new trait to Lynn's personality after how many seasons just felt like it was done for the sole purpose of creating conflict for what I'll assume at face value is a one and done deal. This was, in my opinion, one of the worst presentations of Lynn's character, and I don't think this type of behavior for this kind of episode works for someone like her. Conceptually, it could work to a degree if the story was changed to something that would be more in line with Lynn's usual brand of athleticism and competitiveness. The episode should have been rewritten as something more conventional and pulled directly from one's childhood, like the kids having a day off from school and deciding to have a snowball fight with Lincoln leading one half of his sisters and Lynn leading the other half. The episode could play with the idea of Lynn taking snowball fights very seriously like she does for any regular sport, thus making her savage desire to decimate everyone with snowballs and win the war, so to speak, make more sense. That idea alone makes for a more interesting and creative story. Another idea would be to keep the central conflict of the kids trying to make it to school without getting pummeled, but replace the characters. In this case, have a jerk like Chandler take on Lynn's role and switch out Lincoln and his sisters for the action news team. I mean, when you really think about it, chucking snowballs for one's personal amusement just sounds like something you'd expect more from Chandler than Lynn. But the story we were given was the story we were given, and it's the kind of story that doesn't do Lynn's character any favors. But speaking of story, the one bad thing about the episode is that it felt like it dragged on for too long. If this had been a regular 3-minute short, it could have worked much better. Seriously, there's only so much total and complete Lynn-sanity this episode could take, and I had already had more than enough long before the kids tried to trap their sister inside the family restaurant through wacky cartoon antics. I suppose the only silver lining to the conflict is how at least half of the kids were able to evade Lynn's wrath and make it to school in one piece, despite their sister easily escaping from the freezer inside the restaurant. Thanks to Lincoln tricking his sister, Lynn ended up being the cause of her own downfall. And by downfall, I mean the snow falling down from the restaurant roof because of the loud excess burping created created from her constant eating. Even though she later admitted she was impressed with how they were able to outsmart her, she was still ready to throw down when she found out the next day would be another day for snowball packing. However, the other kids wouldn't have to leave the house that day since it was the start of their winter break from school, so their sister would be outside waiting for nothing. But hey, Lynn didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow, or I guess what won't be happening, and she doesn't need to know, and that's good enough for everyone. Overall, this episode has very little good and therefore has a bigger share of bad and ugly. The story felt too long, Lynn was presented in a way that doesn't really work for her character, especially when you remember how her behavior in previous winter episodes was nothing like we saw here, and even though it's not really about Christmas, I consider this to be the show's weakest, if not worst episode to take place in the month of December. With no backstory explaining why Lynn goes off the deep end with snowballs on packing days, among other things, this episode is quite a low point for season 6. We all know Lynn can have good episodes, or at least I think she can, but in my opinion, this honestly isn't one of them because this newly added layer to her personality comes off as a complete deviation from how she would normally be presented. The episode needed some rewrites to either play more to the true side of Lynn's athletic and competitive character, or just replace her with someone else. It's a shame the episode isn't about a World War inspired snowball fight because that could have been a way more interesting story than what we were ultimately given, but hey, it's just another missed opportunity, so it just is what it is. With that said, I give Snow Escape a 5.2 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Snow Escape. I will leave you with one little eye-catching note. There's a mistake that can be seen on Lana's snow outfit. Her coat and pants are very dark colored when she's about to leave the garage, and then suddenly they revert to their usual colors when she runs out of the garage. How do the people putting these episodes together never catch on to things like this? As always, we must remember the one word that bears repeating when these little screw-ups slip under the radar. Consistency, people. Consistency! But anyway, as far as the rest of the episode goes, what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.